Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey. I'm on vacation over here in Los Angeles, California, headed back to Shanghai next week. But I've got a bunch of questions recently in lieu of the deaths of not one but two professional boxers. The first being Maxim Dadashev, a Russian boxer who died after a fight. Bit of controversy there, and days later, just mere days later, there was a Argentinian boxer, Hugo Santillan, who also died in the ring. And this is going to be a bit of a different video because I'm going to tell you to go and watch somebody else's video for a very important opinion that I think needs to be heard not just by the public, but needs to be reiterated to everybody responsible for officiating combat sports. So go check out Chael Sonnen. Again, Chael Sonnen, he's got an excellent video on this subject, and he has some very strong opinions, and he's been saying this stuff for a very long time, well before this boxing match, that there is no reason for fights to be as long as they are. Now, Chael's a very strong advocate for getting rid of 5-round title fights in MMA. And he has said similar things about boxing. There's really no reason for boxing matches to be 12 rounds long. Why does that matter as far as deaths of fighters go? The longer the fight goes, the more injuries happen, the more damage is done. The reason that we don't see as many deaths in amateur combat sports is very simple. The fights are shorter. Amateur boxing, you got 3-round fights. Professional boxing, 10, 12, 15. At some point there were 15-round fights. Back in the olden days of boxing, there was no limit to the number of rounds, but the rounds were different. They weren't timed. As soon as a fighter fell to the ground, that was the end of the round. They would give him a recovery period. If he could get back up under his own power, it would be a new round. And so some of those old-timey matches before the Queensberry rules went on for over 100 rounds. So why is Mr. Sonnen's assertion so important for combat sports? Why? Because we take so much care to ensure the safety of the fighters in almost every other regard. They have a guy who checks the gloves and the wraps. They have guys who check to see if you're greased up right or wrong before you go in the cage or the ring. They have guys to check your shorts and your gloves and your shoes and everything else that a boxer or any other combat sports athlete does. They have guys who check these things to make sure it's done the right way. We have athletic commissions whose job it is to look out for the safety of the fighters in theory. But then we have the actual fights, which go on and on and on. And the fact of the matter is, the human body is not meant to take 12 rounds of punishment. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I can shadow box for 12 rounds, I can hit the bag for 12 rounds, I can spar against guys who can't hit me for 12 rounds. But that's not the same thing as taking punishment for 12 rounds. Taking brain damage for 12 rounds, not even remotely the same thing. So I'm going to second Chael Sonnen's assertion that we need to make the fights shorter. And I'm going to add something on top of that. As Mr. Sonnen would say, I'm going to offer you this. And I will offer you this. Shorter fights are more exciting fights. Longer fights, what happens? Man, I'm not going to say there haven't been exciting long fights, exciting 5-round fights. Somebody might say, well, professional Muay Thai fights are 5 rounds. But let me ask you this. Go to Thailand, watch a 5-round Muay Thai fight. How is the first round different from the 5th round? It's a lot different. It's night and day. Those first couple of rounds, those guys are feeling each other out. They're burning the round. They're laying low so that people can place their bets, so they can draw out that fight longer. They are fully capable of putting as much energy into round 1 as they are into round 5, but they don't. Why? To draw out that fight, to make it more exciting for the fans, supposedly. So if the fighters fought the way they did in round 5, there's no way those fights would go 5 rounds if they did that for each and every one of those 5 rounds. They can't. The human body is not built for that. Western fight shows are different than Muay Thai. Traditionally in Thailand, they don't have that, that very paced, slow, deliberately light, friendly first round, and sometimes second round. You might see a feeling out phase in a 10 or 12 round boxing match. But what are they doing? They're burning the round. They're not going hard and heavy in round 1, not usually. I mean, sometimes there are exceptions to every norm. But what's happening there? They're putting on a show. Often they're carrying the other guy along to sell the fight, because many boxers get paid per round. If you fight 1 round and knock him out in the first round, well, yeah, you won the fight, but you didn't entertain the fans for 12 rounds. You didn't give them the epic showdown that they paid to see. And a promoter may not be very happy about that. There's politics behind the scenes, guys. There's a lot of politics. And that politics is costing lives. And while a death in the ring, or as a result of what happens in the ring, is more of the exception and not the norm, it shouldn't be something that's happening at all. I've worked as a professional referee for mixed martial arts and for boxing and for kickboxing, for all those combat sports. And my job as a referee is to make sure that the fighters don't kill each other, to make sure they don't seriously hurt each other. So when one man or woman is no longer able to intelligently defend themselves, my job is to intervene, to break them apart, to stop that action. But intelligently defending yourself, man, in the case of Maxime, if you heard those sound bites, his coach was begging him to stop that fight, begging him, please, let me stop this fight. But again, whatever relationship they had beforehand, the coach trusted his fighter's decision. He left it up to him ultimately. I want to stop this fight, but it's up to you. And here's the thing, when you leave it up to the fighters will fight. It's what we do. And my very first pro kickboxing match, in round 1, I had my left ear torn off. It was hanging by a thread. It was gushing blood. Between rounds, the ring doctor took a look at it and said, if you take another heavy shot right there, that could take your ear clean off. But he gave me the option. He said, do you want to continue? And if I thought about it logically for a moment, if I had time to cool off and think about the long-term ramifications of that, I might have thought, maybe I don't want to continue. But in the heat of a fight, a fighter will always continue. As long as the lights are still on, a fighter will keep going. And so I said, of course I want to keep fighting. And I went back in there and I scrapped for 2 more rounds and eked it out to the decision. And I thought about it afterwards, sitting there in the emergency room, having my ear stitched back on, like, whoa, perhaps that was a reckless choice. And perhaps the fighters should not be the ones to make that choice. That's not a popular opinion, especially among fighters. Man, when you see the referee intervene and call it a TKO, what usually happens? If the fighter's still healthy, because the referee saved him, they often jump up and sometimes they argue with the referee. No, I'm fine, I'm still in it, I can continue. But it is always best to err on the side of caution. My very last fight put me into retirement with some very serious injuries. My skull was broken, a depressed skull fracture, hole in my head literally right there, left me with a blind spot in one eye and a crack all the way up my cranium. I got knocked out, clipped on the chin, I fell down. The referee saw this, hesitated for a moment. My opponent followed up with the big, overhand, heavy shot that cracked my skull wide open. The referee gave me a chance to see if I could do something about it. And then as soon as he saw, okay, no, obviously not, he's out, he jumped in there and stopped the fight. I wish he wouldn't have given me the benefit of a doubt. I wish he would not have. I wish he would have erred on the side of caution, and as soon as he saw me dropped, would have jumped in there. And I'm sure Maxime, and I'm sure, what's his name? Hugo. Man, if they were around here today to give an opinion, I think they probably would have wished the same thing. I don't want to put words in the mouths of the dead, but I imagine their opinions would have changed if they were given the time to cool off and think about it logically. Because in a fight, we don't think, we react. We don't think in a fight, we react. That's not just in terms of decision making, as far as should I continue the fight or not. I mean, it's everything, it's technique. Somebody punches you in the face, you don't calculate carefully. Well, I will move my hand here and block that way and then counterpunch this way and do this karate move or whatever. We don't think that way because we can't think in the heat of the moment. We react. We do whatever our training tells us to do, whatever is in our muscle memory. That's what we do. And what is in the muscle memory of a fighter? To fight. Fighters fight, my friend. It's our job. It's not our job to stop the fight. That's the job of the referee. That's the job of the officials who officiate in the sport, whose job it is, sure, to make some money off of this venture, but more than anything, their job should be, number one, to ensure the safety of the fighters. So go check out Chael Sonnen's video. Again, show him some love and share that one. Share it. Share it to the people whose opinions can change the sport of boxing. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.